Are we live?
We live.
Welcome to the God Theory Podcast. That's how I sit before I start every podcast, in the rock out position. Welcome everyone. This is the God Theory Podcast, episode 38, where we're talking about support the troops, unless you shouldn't.
Support the troops automatically for all reasons. Go.
Yeah. And this touches on a lot of different things, so I'm kind of excited to talk about this.
Yeah, we're going to do a little civics. We're going to do a little social networking. We're going to do a little changing minds and bad ideas. It's a gamut.
Psychology.
A little psychology. That's a rare treat for us.
We're going to have a psychological expert on a little bit later, so be cool. And this is like widely applicable. I always love these episodes that touch on a lot of different things and things you can actually use. So,
yes.
like the fundamental attribution error, for example. That's something I reference like once a week, if not more often. And we had talked about that, and I was like, yes, please listen to that episode. So good.
It's fundamental.
It's fundamental, you could say. So this one is spawned because it has to do with a lot of things, but it was spawned because of what? Do you want to introduce this?
So our story begins with Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins. Lynn Jenkins.
That's how I hope when she comes to the Congress. That's what they do.
Bust in there. Yeah. They're in the middle of like the opening. They haven't opened the Congress yet. They're just doing all the little like pre-game stuff. Having their prayer or whatever it is Congress does to start the meeting. And then she just burst in. Lynn Jenkins.
She has to do it for herself too, I bet. Yeah.
But so Pittsburgh post office, there was a huge sign that said, "God bless America," in red, white, and blue font, because why be subtle, right? And a tiny American flag in the upper right corner, just in case people didn't know it was patriotic. And, they had to take it down because it's really illegal to do on a federal building. And so Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins replied with this. Oh, and if you're doing a drinking game or filling out a bingo card at home, go ahead and mark off your using September 11th as a cheap political ploy space, because that's the first thing she says. The attacks on September 11th, 2001 left many of us with a new sense of patriotism and meaning for God bless America. Can we just stop right there, first of all? What's wrong with that sentence?
A lot, but what are you getting at? The fact that she's already leaning so heavily on an emotional device?
Yes, that. But here's what I'm thinking. If you talk to atheists who have joined the movement lately, many of them will reference September 11th as like their first step into the wide world of maybe God isn't there, because that was a horrible thing that just happened and he didn't do anything about it.
All right. Okay.
Like, if you ever listen to the Thinking Atheist podcast, that he cites that as like his what the fuck moment where he started to leave religion. Like, the attacks on September 11th left many of us with a new sense of patriotism and meaning for God bless America. I don't know how you get that out of that. I don't know how you get God bless America with, oh, we just lost thousands of lives and our New York skyline is forever changed.
Oh, right. Yeah. So like the direct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because she's trying to reference like this indirect line of like tragedy and then us getting all together, or us weeping and then us all collecting ourselves together and deciding to go to war with a non-relevant country. But she's saying that like, okay, yeah, and she's linking that long link, but really it's like the immediacy. Most people's initial reaction was, "Holy shit!" Like,
yeah. Not it wasn't like America. God bless America. No, most people weren't thinking that at the time.
Yeah, like, guys, turn on your TV right now. You won't believe this. 2 planes have hit the Twin Towers, and they're like, "God bless America."
Right. It wasn't like, look at that. Look at God blessing America right now. No, in fact, I think we all had quite enough religion on that day. It was not atheism that brought those towers down. So so then she continues. And again, if you're playing the bingo game, your next card's about to get filled. I thank our veterans in the Pittsburgh community for coming together and expressing their faith in America by purchasing and hanging this banner outside the Pittsburgh post office. And if you look at this banner, it's really shitty and small. Like they're trying to play this up as like a big sacrifice that all the veterans like saved up their pennies and like chipped in and got it. Like it's a really, like, you could get it at Kinko's for probably $40. Like, it's not a big banner. It does not look like it's that expensive. But let's continue. It has been proudly displayed for more than a decade. Next fallacy. I hate when people like point out that something has been wrong for a long time as proof for why it should continue.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like It's been that way for a while, so therefore it should stay that way.
Yeah, that's literally antithetical to the entire human rights movement.
Right. That's the opposite of progressive values.
Yeah.
So she said, it's been that way for more than a decade, and I find it sad that our local post office would be forced to bend to the whims of an outside organization such as the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Seeking the removal of this patriotic banner is a classic solution in search of a problem, and I urge the United States Postal Service to rethink their decision, as this banner means more than just words to our veterans and community members. So that is the quote that kind of sparked this whole thing, and especially a response from one of our friends, Tim, who has been has he been on the show? We've had his brother on.
No, we never had Tim. Huh.
Tim is he has served in the Army, right? Mm-hmm. And so he thought, hey, she's speaking for veterans, so I think I'll weigh in. And you also, Jeremiah, are a veteran. You have served your time in Iraq, mm-hmm. So maybe you would like to read Tim's comment.
Yes. Hold on.
It sparked quite the shitstorm, because you read that and you're like, oh, these are a bunch of people who clearly value the veterans. They're citing them as the reason why we should keep this shitty little banner up. So Tim's like, well, I myself have served, so maybe you would like to hear my thoughts.
Man, I gotta find the page. I actually don't have it pulled up.
Oh, hold on. Here's the link.
I spent a long time on this page, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I have a problem where people I don't just, when people are wrong on the internet, it's not that big of a deal to me. But when they're demonstrably wrong on the internet, I have a problem. So it's like if someone says something
hilarious.
Like,
you'll send me a thing like, someone's wrong on the internet. Hold on, I got to go take care of this. And I'm like, damn it, I thought we had that cleaned up. I thought we fixed that.
We fixed them all. But yeah, it was, I mean, like if someone says something like, you know, like the Bengals suck, right? Like, I don't care. That's an opinion. Whether they do suck or they don't suck, that's your opinion. You can have that. That's fine. Or like, you know, red is the best color of anything.
Right.
But if you put like, but if you put something like Bernie Sanders doesn't have a financial plan, like if you say his financial plan is bad, then I might engage you. I might be like, well, what do you mean? Like, I like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
But that's probably no secret. But I might engage you and ask you like, well, what do you mean? Because I want to know if I'm wrong. But if someone's demonstrably wrong, like he doesn't have a plan or pie in the sky, I'm like, well, hang on. Pie in the sky insinuates that it's, you know, he doesn't have a real attainable way to do this. And, you know, he kind of does. And then, and on top of that, like, you know, he's put plans out. He even put it out in an infographic so it was disseminable. So you have no excuse to not know what his financial plan is unless you're just trying to, you just don't want to think so. And so you didn't even look. So you're just like, I bet he doesn't.
The podcast Dogma Debate just did an episode a couple weeks ago about Bernie Sanders and his plans. And they actually had a tax expert on, like a financial planning tax guy, who went through all the tax plans of like Cruz, Carson, Sanders. He went through everything, explained the pros and cons and the effective tax rate, because like what your tax rate is, you have to factor in the deductions you qualify for before you actually know what it's going to change. And so anyway, it was really interesting. He's just like, yeah, it turns out Bernie Sanders is going to save everyone a lot of money unless you're really super rich, and then you're going to pay a little bit more. But most of us are going to save that on healthcare costs. It's going to be worth it. So anyway.
And that was on Dogma Debate?
Yeah, Dogma Debate with David Smalley.
Yeah, I like David Smalley. I spent a lot of time on his page. I'll reference it today a little bit later. But my glasses in. I fell asleep with my contacts in. This has been happening like randomly with me. Like I'll just lay down and forget they're in.
I used to do that every night, and it turns out you're not supposed to. So my eye just is totally angry at me forever now.
Yeah, I woke up and I was like, all right, these are coming out. So I'm putting on my glasses here. Okay, so Tim says, he quotes the person about urging the United States Postal Service to rethink their decision. And then he says, I'm a veteran, and I'll tell you what it means to me. It's a violation of the separation of church and state and an affront to the Constitution I took an oath to uphold. I don't need any, quote, patriots with an agenda of eroding that separation or using the government to endorse their religion to presume speaking for me. I don't need this divisive garbage plastered all over government buildings as if they were roadside billboards or church marquees. Faith and patriotism are not inherently intertwined, nor should they be affirmed as such by state authorities. Which is, I think, well written.
Yeah, I feel like that's a well-phrased comment, pretty thoughtful. So it probably sparked some intelligent discourse, right?
Oh, yeah. From the people involved? Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I have this problem too. Like, people are like, veterans, don't like that. And I'm like, don't say that. Don't say that. That's rude. Like, so there's a big thing for a while that says, don't thank me for being a veteran. There was like an article going around with it. It's like a sentiment of some veterans. And I'm like, no, don't, what? no, like one of the most I think I've already said this on this podcast, but there was a meaningful moment that's happened to me. When people thank me in general, but not in general. Like just like if I'm just out somewhere and somebody walks up and goes, "Hey, heard you're a veteran. Thank you." I'm not like so meaningful. I'm actually like, that's a little weird, but cool. Thanks. Thank you for thanking me. Like it's a genuine nice thing to do. But there was this kid that came up and he bought me a muffin out of his own money because I was wearing my uniform and he saw me in a cafe and he said thank you for protecting the country, and it's not quite how it works, but I appreciate the sentiment, right? He's saying that you put your life on the line. So I was like, thanks. Like we don't do it for the money. The money's shit. Like for me, at least I joined because for ideological purposes.
Yeah, I think everyone has their own reasons for joining, but it's when you speak for all veterans, you're already automatically going to be wrong because not everybody is doing, and not everyone's joining for the same reasons. Not everyone thinks the same way. Not everyone doesn't want to be thanked. Some people enjoy being thanked.
Yeah, and this the point that I'm underlining here is whenever Tim said faith and patriotism are not inherently intertwined, and that's what I do. Whenever people are like, our troops, are out there fighting to defend God's great nation, I'm like, stop, don't do that, don't. Especially if you're not a veteran. I get it if you're a veteran and you just think that everyone was like you because you never thought. I don't know. I don't have much tolerance for that, but I get it. Like I'm fine with it. I'm like, hey, don't do that, please. Thanks, appreciate that. But yeah, this happened here, and I can see why Tim got kind of pissed off about it, and I did too.
Yeah, and a lot of people jumped in, and this is what pisses me off because there's this lip service about how we got to respect the troops, we got to respect all the veterans. If that's your position, when a soldier or a former soldier comes in, like you should at least treat them with a modicum of respect, right? If that's what you're saying, you should follow through. But I'm going to just read a couple of the comments. Did you cry like this every time your drill sergeant belittled you in basic training as well? I assume you're one of those people that file reports about them saying they're being too tough and hurting your feelings. Here's another one. This little queer isn't from Pittsburgh, but he did most likely cry when the drill. No way, he looks young enough that his drill sergeant probably gave him a stress card to go cry privately in his room. And so just over and over, everyone just like, oh, little queer, little faggot, probably cried his way through basic training, just belittling his service and his time in the Army because they clicked on his Facebook profile and like, oh man, he says he's interested in men. Now we don't have to respect the troops anymore. This guy's a little faggot.
Yeah, exactly. That instant switch, because those comments David just read were the first comments. We're not cherry picking here. Those are the first few comments. And they kept going like that. And so obviously I jumped in as well, but a lot of people did. Tim's dad did as well. He's just like, Tim's dad, man, he is a direct man. Like he's a shoot from the hip kind of guy. He was just like, he called him pathetic, ungrateful wretch, and like stuff like that. And I was like, yes, exactly. But it's not the tactic I would have taken, but he's right in the sense that what you're pathetic, and then also completely antithetical to what you just said. You were just like, hey, support the troops. And then the troops like, hey, I actually don't support this. And they're like, well, we don't support you, bitch. Like, and then they start calling him all kinds of names and a pussy effect. And these are completely unsubstantiated. Like, I don't know if Tim cried in basic or not, and no one does, but I doubt he did. Almost no one did. And so to assume that is just, and then to say it as truth is just, it's the opposite of supporting the troops. It's literally shitting on troops for no reason.
Yeah. And Tim finally, after 70 comments like that, says, look at yourselves. Presumably, the sign existed to honor veterans. That is, until an actual veteran showed up to disagree with it. It took all of one comment, and that's true, for the reverence and uber patriotism that has been employed to justify a religious display on government property to disappear. You were scrambling over your patriotic selves to degrade my military service in any manner you could, rather than address the issue. Such hypocritical behavior ultimately illustrates my point and lays bare for anyone reading this thread precisely what the sign is about at its core. Government endorsement of religion, rural tribalism, and faith-based privilege. It's literally an implicit sign of what you vocalized explicitly here, that only the faithful are truly welcome, and we all know which faith is being endorsed. That is why the sign was taken down. Any elected official with a modicum of objectivity and ethics can see right through your bias and identify an agenda that runs contrary to the Establishment Clause and a pluralistic society.
And then he dropped the mic. Presumably, we don't know if he had a mic.
Right, in my head he did. But yeah. This is one of the digressions that kept happening was people were saying like, "There's separation of church and state's not in the Constitution. Go read your Constitution." So half of the thread became devoted to just teaching inbred yokels civics lessons for free, teaching them what jurisprudence means, the Supreme Court and its role in arbitrating these sorts of things. Just basic high school level civics lessons that people keep toting out. And my favorite little gem that they brought out, and this is why when people ask me why I'm a militant atheist, this is one of the reasons. Someone says, well, it says in God we trust in our money, so how could it be illegal to put God Bless America on our post office? Which to me is like saying, well, I murdered a guy and didn't get arrested, so why am I getting arrested for speeding? Like,
Right.
just because it's something wrong is happening doesn't justify something else that's wrong. And so I am actually, some people are like, why are we, there's an atheist lawsuit trying to get that off the money. And some people are like, hey, pick your battles, man. Like, it's not going to happen. What's the point? It's like, this is why I think that's an important battle, because every time a Christian takes out a dollar bill and they read "In God We Trust" on it under the Illuminati pyramid with the floating eyeball, which they don't really seem to pay attention to, like every time they see "In God We Trust" on the money, that is justifying in their view that we are a theocratic government, and that becomes a something they can throw out in these kinds of discussions. And I'm like, no, get that shit off our money. This is just giving them ammunition they don't need.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's as you man, when I first switched over, I thought that it was just, you see this bugbear, right, or this big animal, the 800-pound gorilla that, like, oh, this, religion is a thing. Okay, cool. And then it has some flaws in it, but you're like, oh, we'll pick out a couple of these here and there. But then you realize that it's not that. It's like its hands are just gripping on to like everything in life. It seems like you just keep running into it, and you're like, why does this have to be a thing? What is this? And the more you notice it, the more frustrating it is. So I get it. I think it's shit, and I try to be. The thing is that's the thing. I haven't met. I'm sure they exist. In fact, I'm positive, just because normal bell curve and how that works, that there are people who switched over and became immediately militant and then stayed that way for bad reasons. They just want to stir up shit, and it makes them feel important and meaningful to do these kinds of things, and they don't care about the tactics because it makes them feel good. Like when apes bark down the alpha male chain, and like to make themselves feel better. Like, I get it. I know people like that exist. That's shitty, but most of them, at least the ones I've met in my experience, have been forced into that position. Like, you're just like, it just, where you're like, oh, now I'm pissed about everything. This sucks. I don't want to be here. And like Sam Harris says, whenever he said, one of the most wonderful times in life is whenever you're pushed into a position, kicking and screaming, because you're forced there by the logic of it.
Right.
It's an exciting place because you knew that you were dead wrong and you wouldn't have gotten there any other way, and you can be quite sure of your position now because you tried to get out the best you could. Like, you were like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there.
It's the best way to fact check yourself is when you have a position that you don't want to have.
Yeah, exactly.
But this isn't limited to like idiots on Facebook. And if you look at these people, they are, I don't know, they are not an attractive bunch. Just like overweight, like angry white people. Like, to a person, it's a bunch of overweight, angry white people. I don't know if there's a correlation between like being unattractive and being angry on Facebook, but it's coming up in this thread. And so, but here's the thing about representative democracy is that when the majority of people are idiots, you start to see it happen in Congress. So we know Michelle Bachmann and David Barton, who's a professional liar / quote unquote historian. They've been kind of bitching about this this whole like taking down the 10 Commandments, and Michelle Bachmann says she's defending this portrait of Moses in the House chamber as a reminder to all lawmakers that, quote, a holy God gave to Moses the moral law, the 10 Commandments, the law upon which every other law has descended, and upon which no other law, if it violates that moral law, could stand, because that is the ultimate law. Now, first of all, I don't think she knows what the word ultimate means. It means last, and we've made laws since then, so already we're proving that she's an idiot. But
yeah,
this 10 Commandments are the basis of our laws. It keeps coming up, and I don't understand it, Jeremy. Maybe you can explain it to me from a psychological perspective, because this is the most easily refuted thing ever. If you just look at the 10 Commandments, I think the best response is just ask them to name like 4 commandments and see if they can. Because if you name 4 of them, you're going to name at least 2 of them that are contrary to our current system of laws that we have today in 2016 in America. Yeah. So I thought it would be fun just really quickly to go through the list of the 10 Commandments, and let's just fact check this claim, because it's happening over and over again. So number one, and neither of us are attorneys, just disclaimer. So this is just a layperson's interpretation of the law, but I feel like we're on pretty solid ground here. Here's the first commandment. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Classic.
Remember that
American
law that says you cannot have any other religion except Hebrew? Remember that law?
Yeah.
Only Jewish religion is allowed in
yeah, and
America?
that's really what keeps Christianity in check, and tired and scared in the shadows, because they can't meet in public. It's against the law. Judaism is the only way to go.
Yeah,
So.
that's why Bernie Sanders is going to be the latest in a long line of Jewish presidents.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he actually came out and said he was not religious in an interview. He's like, yeah, I'm actually not that religious, which will be amazing if we have the first president who's not pandering to the religious right by pretending to believe in that bullshit. Like Obama, probably not religious, but he had to pretend he was to get elected.
Oh, and then have you heard the Hillary thing? She did her, because I read that same article, or I watched the interview, but what showed me the interview was an article, and about Bernie Sanders saying that, and I had already seen some of the stuff where he'd been like, "Listen, here's what I believe. And anytime someone does that, they don't believe. Anytime someone won't go, "Yeah, of course," or whatever, or "Yeah, kind of." He was just
when
like,
they try to redefine it, like, yeah, I believe in God and that there's an energy and we're all connected and love. They're like, okay, so you're an atheist, you just don't like the word. Got it.
Yeah, so he's like, we're all in this together. That's what I believe. I believe we're all in this together. We need to make it the best we can for everyone else. And I was like, okay, yeah, atheist.
So you're a human. Yeah, at the very least.
At the very least, a human, yeah, but probably an atheist, and you just don't want to say that because that's not the headline you want. Yeah, and so and he's already dealing with the socialist scary word. So what was I gonna say?
Hillary.
Oh yeah. So the same article is like contrast this with this, and she's like, I believe in God. I believe God blessed this nation to be great, and I'm here to make that happen. And I was like,
bullshit, you Hillary. You're just trying not to alienate the Christian right.
Yeah, because she's looking at
they're already hating you.
She's looking past the primaries, right?
Right. She's looking for the general election. But yeah, so not only is that commandment, number one commandment, the most important commandment, when God was putting his list together, he's like, no rape, no. What should I lead with? No slavery, no. I got it. I'm the best, and don't look at other gods. Boom, nailed it. Moral lawgiver. So yeah, commandment number one is basically what I like to call the jealous girlfriend commandment, where like, why are you looking at her? Look at me.
And, yeah. Or shouldn't it be like a little suspicious? Imagine this is the first time you'd ever heard the 10 Commandments, right? And I encourage people to do this with like the Star Wars movies too. And there's unknown question, or there's unanswered questions. I'm like, go rewatch the first one and pretend like you don't know anything else. And every time you hear something, go, is this the first time I heard that? All right, okay, I know something else from the other movies. Okay, and do that, and you'll have a lot of questions at the end. But the same thing here. Like, imagine this is the first time you're ever hearing this, and the guy's like, I got it. You're like, I got what? He's like, come over right now. I've got something that God just gave me. And you're like, oh my fucking God, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, 10. He said all of life can be broken down 10 things. And I'm like, fuck me, I'm over there in a second. I get there.
This is the ultimate law. This is what all their laws are based on.
Yeah. And he's like, are you ready? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I'm the only one. And I'm like, wait. Hang on.
It's not even that clear. It's don't put other gods ahead of me. So like already we're like, wait, this is monotheistic, right? Not currently, no. We're still kind of in a polytheistic society. But I'm the number one god. I'm like the Jupiter of the gods. And I'm like, okay. And
you're like, but you're coming out straight out of the gate, right? You've got a whole audience here, and we want you spoke to the entire world, and that's the first thing you say.
Yeah.
That's how you open your address.
It's like a rap battle where like the first few verses are just about like, I'm so great, look at me, I'm the best that ever was. And you're like, all right, that's not really a moral law though. You're just kind of like establishing your credentials.
That's just a dope rhyme.
Yeah. Not only is it not a moral law, but it's also specifically illegal under our current system of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of religion. I don't know if you've heard of those. They're part of the Bill of Rights.
Vaguely familiar, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're already, I don't know. I'm going to award this -1 points. Let's do a scale. Let's say +1 if it's part of our law, 0 if it's not part of our law but isn't illegal, and -1 if it's actually illegal under our current system. So we'll just rank it that way. So we're at -1. Number 2. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Thou shalt not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in the earth beneath, for that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, jealous ex-girlfriend, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. So, number 2, don't make statues of things. What's the irony here? What are we defending with this?
Yeah, well, you mean the courthouse, or are you talking about?
Yeah, they're putting graven images of the Ten Commandments and of Moses in front of the courthouse, and on the Ten Commandments it says, "Don't make statues of shit."
Yeah, So I'm gonna have to say -1 on this one. I was thinking maybe I was trying to be generous, and I was like maybe a 0, but freedom of religion covers this. Freedom of speech definitely covers it.
Freedom of This is actually Sharia law. You know, if you are a Muslim and you draw Muhammad, that's considered illegal in countries that are theocracies. But here in America, we actually explicitly allow you to make images of whatever the hell you want. That's part of it. So the whole reason we're even having this conversation is that somebody made a graven image and put it in an illegal place. But you can still make the image. You just can't put it in front of a courthouse. So we're at -2 right now. -2 for 2. It's not looking so well for the ultimate law. But let's look at number 3. I think number 3 is where it's going to turn around, because he's gotten his first 2 out. They're essentially the same. The first one is like, don't put other gods before me. The second one is like, also don't make statues of other gods, because that also pisses me off. So no other gods, also no statues. Yeah, I know you were thinking of that as a technicality. Still nothing about rape.
And by this point, imagine you're this guy who's over at your friend the prophet's house, and they're at the second one, and you're like, you only got 8 left, man. There's a lot to cover. Are you sure? Like, I mean, this better be one of those.
This one kind of fits under the first one, doesn't it? He's like, yeah, but we gotta be specific, because if I say no other gods, they might be like, yeah, but this is another god. It's just a statue of another god. So
the best part is there was like there's stuff on there like don't rape, or like don't be a dick, like, or something like that, like, or don't torture children.
Maybe boil your water before you drink it. Like, there's a whole lot of useful information.
But he's like I gotta move those off. Those are gonna have to be off. But definitely put the second part about the graven images. That is unacceptable.
Carve that in stone. Wait, carve it in stone? Carve it into, like, engrave it? You want me to engrave this? Yes. But you just said, don't question me, Moses.
Oh, okay. It's not an image.
It's just words.
But what if it's an image of a book with words on them? Or like a tablet? What if someone makes an image of the tablets? He's like, don't mince words. There's only 8 of
Probably
these left.
Won't come up. We're running out of space.
Yeah, don't make me make number 3 about this, Moses. I'll do it. And he's like, okay.
Okay, so the first one is, don't look at other gods. The second one is super don't look at other gods. Number 3, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Okay, so this is Louis C.K. calls this one, don't say my name with a shitty attitude. That's number 3. That's the third most important moral law, is don't say the name of the Lord, but in like a shitty way. Like, that's immoral.
Well, that's the modern interpretation, but let's take this at its source. Jewish people who actually believe the 10 Commandments is the word of God, right? Like, they don't just like Christians are like, yeah, it's important, but Jesus is more important, right? But like Jews, they won't even write God. They write G_D, right? Or G-D, depending on.
Or Jehovah without the vowels.
Right, exactly. It's because they're very serious about it. If you're saying their name in any sort of vanity, which is kind of open to interpretation, but yeah, you shouldn't even say his name. So really, this could be a 0, or it could be a -1, because we have in God we trust on our money.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and make it a -1 because, again, freedom of speech is, like, number 1.
Yeah.
So not being allowed to say something, anything, explicitly we are protected in our Constitution to say whatever the hell we want.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, fuck, balls, cunt, like, whatever. It's all out there. And God, Jehovah, Yahweh, Zeus, Odin, Jove, Jupiter. I'm just saying all these God names because that's my constitutional right. So I'm going to say we're at -3. Because that is explicitly against what the Constitution says.
Right.
All right. Well, so far we've gotten nothing that's vaguely moral. It's just a bunch of shit about how God is, like, really insecure. But maybe number 4 is going to be this moral truth that we've based all our laws on. Let's see what it is. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your chihuahua, nor your weasel, nor your bison, like just nothing's working. Know your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. All right, so you know that law that says like if you work on Saturday, you are put to death?
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Sunday. We've moved it. We've changed the Sabbath. It's Sunday now. You know how when you this is why Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday, because if you even gather sticks on the Sabbath, it's the death penalty.
Yeah.
That's what all modern laws are based on, according to Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's no laws based on that, so probably 0. This would be a 0.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a law that's explicitly protecting my right to keep my business open, but I do know that if you put me to death for working on Sunday, you would be charged with murder.
Yeah.
So I might just say -1 on this one, because it feels like it's the laws that spin off of this prescribe death to people who work on that day, and I feel like that would be against the law.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, yeah, that's a good point. Even if there's not a law, there's definitely a zeitgeist, or like there's a jurisprudence that shows that you can do any kind of business as long as it's not actively harming someone or it hasn't been already ruled against, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if I open a business and it's, I don't know, making scrunchies out of butt hair or something, like I'm just trying to think of something really original that no one's done. And so if I did that and someone's like, no, shut it down, it's illegal, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're like, no. The whole point of laws is that these are the only things you can't do, right?
Right.
You can do anything else, but these are the only things you can't do. So I think it is, protected under law, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that if somebody tried to shut your business down that was open on Sunday, you would have the full power of the law on your side, because that would be illegal what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. Especially because of religion.
Yeah.
If they're like, you can't do this because I'm Jewish and I don't want you to be open on Sunday, or wouldn't be Jewish.
Now, it's true that federal buildings aren't open on Sunday, but the DMV's close on Saturdays too, and they're only open like 3 hours a week. So I don't know if that's specifically honoring the Sabbath or just the bureaucracy does not like to work very much.
Yeah. So 0 or -1. I guess -1 maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's be generous. We'll give this one a 0.
Let's go 0.
There's nothing. I don't know. Again, if you're a law expert, let us know if we should give this one -1.
Yeah.
But just when you're making your point, it helps to be as generous as possible to the opposing team. So we're at -3 out of 4.
-3 out of 4. All right. And already at this point, tell me you're not just beads of sweat running down your head, because like God is talking, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the rare moments where he talked directly to
10 moral guidelines that we need to base every law on from here on out.
From here on, and he's at 4, and kids aren't safe. Your life's not safe. Your personal integrity is nothing's safe. You're like,
yes.
Oh shit, this guy next to me,
Still
he's got a knife.
That's
this
still
guy next
fine.
to you. This guy next to you with a knife. He's sharpened. He's ready to murder you.
As long as he doesn't murder you on Sunday.
Yeah.
Or Saturday.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh man, we are at 5. We're almost halfway through. I'm in trouble, right? And beyond that, we own slaves. Like, there's a lot going on. You're like, oh, he better bring this home hard.
Yeah.
Right?
So luckily he pulls through with number 5. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you.
Yeah, at this point, you're really worried because you're like, I'm not a mom or dad. Maybe you are. Maybe you're like, okay, well, I can be honored, but I can still be murdered or raped or killed or be owned as human property.
Yes. So I'm going to tell you about a very famous jurisprudence that was established. It's called Jones versus Jones. It's about a guy who he was talking shitty about his parents. And, just like, I hate your mom and dad. He was a teenager, And so his parents,
the judge is like, I've heard enough.
Yeah.
I've heard enough.
He sentenced him to be drug out to the gates of the city and stoned to death, which was the prescribed penalty for being shitty to your parents under Mosaic law. I'm not making this up. Read your Old Testament.
The defendant is like, he's like, no, hold on. Do you want to hear the context? He's like, there's no amount of nuance that makes this not murderable. You get out there. Yeah.
You stone your kid to death. He is treating you in a shitty way. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm gonna go ahead and say that you're allowed to not honor your parents if your parents are terrible. In fact, Fred Phelps, West Baptist Church guy, one of his kids left the West Baptist Church, and it's no longer part of a hate group. He is breaking this commandment, and we need to kill him, according to Michelle Bachmann's interpretation of constitutional law.
And I wonder how much nuance is in this. Like the parents like, when the kid's like not eating his dinner, and he's like, I will straight up murder you. And he's like, oh, okay, all right, I'll eat my dinner. Jeez, I'll eat my broccoli. He's like, don't be shitty. And he's like, well, I don't really know if that's considered shitty or dishonoring. He's like, I'm the interpreter. Like, I just don't know how much wiggle room you've got there.
Yeah.
Like, dishonoring.
I don't know. I feel like this is a freedom of speech issue again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Oh, and just it depends. I mean, are we taking the consequences that are laid out as well, or just the commandment?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just taking the commandment, then maybe a 0 because we don't have any laws about honoring your parents one way or the other.
Yeah.
But if we're taking the enforced penalty that was attached to this, if you keep reading, then this is definitely a -1 because you're not allowed to kill your kids because they were back talking you. That's we have a whole. I'm gonna give it -1 because we have a child protective services that literally comes in when you try to do anything abusive to a child that's not being respectful.
Yeah.
You will have your children taken away from you if you at all try to force them to respect you.
By the state, not even this isn't a private organization. This is our government.
Yeah, this is our government. So I'm gonna go ahead and say -1 here.
Okay, yeah. So -4 out of 5.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
And still, as this listener, this person who's desperately wanting human rights and laws in his life, you're still pretty worried. You're like, okay, parents, that's important. Maybe put that one at number 10. Or maybe just mention it as an honorable mention.
It's kind of a case-by-case thing because if your parents are shitty, I don't think you're obligated to honor them. Like if Adolf Hitler, if he had kids, like I don't think they would be like, well, I gotta honor him. He's my dad. Like
gotta go. He's like, go kill those Jews, and he's like, oh,
there are a lot of terrible parents that just don't deserve to be honored. They're just bad.
Mm-hmm.
They're abusive to their kids. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna say this is a dumb law, and if you're doing these based on priority, like if you're saying the most important one's number 1, we're 5 in, and we haven't seen a single piece of moral advice. We've seen number 5, which is generally sometimes, depending on the situation, a good thing to do, and then 4 of them they're just wrong. They're just horrible. They're just horrible laws.
And I have to say that, like, as a parent, I've never been like, you need to honor me. Like I've brought up the points. I just reason things out with my kids, and I'm like, so why do you think that would be offensive if you said that? And they're like, what? You know, like, because my kid said something like, I don't like the food we're eating, or something like that. I was like, why would that be offensive? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, well, I don't know. It's not an answer. I need to get your best guess. What is it? He's like, well, because you made it. And I'm like, yeah. And but I make a lot of things. Why is this one particularly something that's offensive? And then eventually he was able to, through Socratic questioning, he was able to understand that I made dinner just for him, right? I made this special dinner just for him. And just because he didn't like one tiny part of it, he said, I don't like your cooking, basically. There's something along those lines. Like, you can talk with a kid. You don't need to demand honor. Like, that's what I understand. When people, you can't reason with a child. I'm like, you absolutely can.
It's a thought crime, right? Like, you are forced to honor me. No, you can't make me do that. There's no way to enforce that.
Yeah, you generally should. But be nice to your parents. They did a lot for you. They chose to bring you to existence.
Assuming they did. You and I were lucky enough that our parents, your mom, my parents, like, they did a lot for us.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they don't know who their dad is. They don't know, like, their parents are meth addicts. Like, there's a lot of kids who grew up with parents that do not deserve any honor and don't do shit for their kids until Child Protective Services comes and takes them away. Again, we have a whole institution that protects kids from their parents. So just assuming that parents deserve honor because they had sex and got knocked up, I don't know if that's a really good law, God. Maybe rethink that one.
So this is the listener at this point. Like, he's probably like, wait, hang on. But what if your parents are abusive or meth addicts? And he's like, hey, don't interrupt. There's 5 more. I'll probably cover whatever you're worried about.
Yeah, just let me finish. There's
only 10 of these, Mr.
All
No
right.
Patience.
We're at -4. Here we go. This is commandment number 6. Thou shalt not kill.
But all right, so that's good. At this point, I'm like,
oh, finally, you can't just murder people. That's fine.
Yeah. Maybe mention that right out of the gate. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd put that number 1 probably if it were me.
But I'm not
a pretty serious one.
We still got like 4 more. Maybe he's bringing it home.
Now, to be fair, this predates Mosaic law. I mean, the Code of Hammurabi in Babylon had this on the books, and every civilization in the history of ever has had a prescription against random murder.
I was going to say, all of anthropology. I mean, if whoever studies anthropology or history, probably. But personally, I know from anthropology, it's nobody's been cool with murder.
Yeah, there's never been like a pro-murder, like the purge, like a purge society. Where it's just like, all right, everyone can murder today. It's a purge day.
No, it's a purge, Morty. It's a purge planet.
It's a purge, Morty. This is great. We gotta stick around and watch this. So, but you know what? Whatever. Just under the rules that we set off, this is definitely a +1. We have a law that says you can't kill. Well, okay. It says you can't kill unless you're standing your ground and the black kid has a hoodie, but usually you can't kill, right? Well, so we'll go ahead and give them this one +1. We went from -4 or -5, -4. We're down to -3, right?
Yeah. So -3 out of 6. Yep.
-3 out of 6. All right, ready? Thou shalt not commit adultery.
That's not against the law.
There are some blue laws on the books in some states that say you're not allowed to commit adultery, but as far as federal law goes, there's not, to my knowledge, is there some kind of like, oh, you had an affair, see you in court.
Yeah, no, I don't
It
think
does work against you on a divorce proceeding. Like there are some consequences. It can hurt your case.
But anything can. Like if you're just
Yeah.
a shitty person, like if they're like, yeah, but all I did was sit around and drink beer, that goes against you too. Like they're gonna be like, oh well, you weren't doing your fair share. So
Yeah, this is one of those things that's just a good moral law. Like it's actually a moral law. Number 7 and number 6, I will say, are both moral rules. Like don't betray someone's trust and don't murder them. Which is still weird that they put them in that order. I would still put adultery is bad, but I would put rape over that, or slavery. Yeah. But whatever. This is, to give credit where it's due, this is kind of good moral advice, but it's not against the law generally.
No, I don't think almost anywhere. I've never heard of those laws you're talking about, and I do marital therapy, but maybe I guess they exist. I should have been informed. So
yeah, there's one in Georgia. Like I'm pulling up a list here. There's a couple. Illegal? There are a few states where cheating on your spouse is still illegal, but they're blue laws. It's stuff that doesn't get enforced because it would not hold up. But let's see. Michigan is one of them. New Hampshire is voting on that currently. There's still a couple states where it's technically illegal to cheat on your spouse.
Well, that's weird.
But again, I don't think if anyone prosecuted you on it, I think that would be one of those instances where the law was overturned.
Yeah, it's not like if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, we got a serious problem. We're trying to get through this. She was infidelis or was cheated on.
Yeah, we caught them in flagrante.
I'm not like, pack your bags. You got to get out of the country.
The police are on your tail.
I have to call now. I'm a mandated reporter. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are, again, I don't know. I wouldn't give this a +1. At best, 0, just because it's kind of illegal somewhat in the same way that it's illegal to, like, walk your dog on Thursdays in some states is illegal. Right. But it's not actually effectively going to be a problem with the law. Right. So I don't know. What do you think, 0 or -1?
0, I guess.
All right. We'll just give this one 0 to be generous.
Because at least it's good advice.
Yeah. It's not horribly immoral like some of the other laws that we've had from God.
Yeah, but at this point, still, you're sweating bullets.
Pretty low.
You're sweating bullets at this point. If you're like, you've got 3 left, dude. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover.
Human trafficking.
We're at -3. Yeah. Our system of laws is currently -3 based on the 10 Commandments. Yeah, so let's go to number 8. Number 8. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, how about war? Shouldn't you address that at some point?
He does. It's not the 10 Commandments, but there's a lot of like wipe out every man, woman, and child in neighboring country laws.
I was going to the paradigm of being this guy that God's never spoken before.
He's like, no, I'm gonna cover that in the next chapter. Stay tuned though, it's good. You're not allowed to leave anybody alive except for the virgins. You get to rape them. Yeah.
He's like, oh, I was hoping you talk about rape in a whole different context. Maybe
that's not the rape law I was hoping for.
Yeah. Hoping to go the other direction. To be honest with you.
Me to rape, but I guess yeah. Number 8 though, thou shalt not steal. Hey, that's against the law in the real world.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's a +1.
Yeah. All right. So good. We're at -2.
-2. That's good. That's super good.
Stealing. That's good.
This one, I feel like every society ever has had this law, not just Judeo-Christian, but whatever. There's a coincidental overlap here. We're gonna give this one to Michelle Bachmann. That's a +1.
Yeah.
-2. Are you ready?
Oh, 2 left.
2 left. We are nervous. What if we break even?
That would be amazing.
That's like the best case scenario at this point. Is our laws are not completely contrary to the 10 Commandments. It's the best we'll be able to say. As a whole, taken as a whole. All right, number 9. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. Oh, okay. Well, This one, it depends on how we interpret this. Because if you swear an oath in a court, you can be held for perjury.
That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about in legal proceedings or whenever there's someone online. It's literally just saying like,
don't lie.
If someone's next door. And they're like, hey, did you see someone come into my house? Or no, not even that. Something silly like, did you take my garden hose? And you're like,
I saw that guy take it.
Yeah. I feel like I saw that It's not illegal. It's not legal at all. I mean, at best you could have a civil suit, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's shitty. It's immoral, but I don't know. I just to be generous, maybe a 0 on this one, because if you interpret this a certain way and you say, okay, once you swear an oath in court to tell the truth, and your neighbor's on trial, and the prosecutor asks you, did you see your neighbor murder someone, and they didn't, and you say you did, that's bearing false witness.
But essentially, that's like lying to the king of any country, right? Because you're lying to a government official, a judge. They don't give a shit if you lie outside of the courtroom. If they come back in, they're like, oh, no, he just lied to me out there. They're like, I don't give a shit. Like, I think it's a 0, but like a hard 0.
Yeah.
If not, maybe a -1, because free speech, like we're very adamant. Free speech is one of our biggest things.
Yeah,
and if
America especially is really big on free speech, even compared to like other European countries like Germany.
Yeah. So censorship
of the other countries, specifically European countries.
Yeah, at best it's a 0, and I do want to be generous, but I do bring that up as an example a lot whenever I talk about morality and what's moral and what's psychologically convicting and what's legally convicting.
Right.
I'm like, these have a lot of overlap, right? Like, isn't that what you guys think? Yeah. Mm. And I'm like, right, maybe the same. Can you think of any examples not the case? But
yeah. This is, we'll just say 0, just to be the most generous we could possibly be to Michelle Bachmann's idiotic idea of how the law works.
Okay,
she's a congresswoman, by the way. She makes laws.
Don't remind me.
Okay, number 10. This is where it's gonna wrap it up. We're gonna cover, I don't know. Let's say you're that guy waiting for the 10th time. Which one are you hoping for? Are you hoping for a rape prohibition? Maybe something against slavery?
You're hoping for one of these long ones. You're hoping for a long. it's just like, and.
Yeah,
don't traffic humans. Don't.
One. Yeah.
Or this. Don't do anything shitty to someone else. Like maybe just a principle.
Yeah, don't be shitty. That's a good one, I think. Like, don't be a shitty person. Okay, let's see what God settled on, the ultimate moral lawgiver that we base all of our laws on currently. Number 10. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox.
He's like, I see you. I know.
Donkey, well, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Now, here's a pro tip: when you're writing scripture and you really want to fill in the page count, like there's like a double space paper. Yeah. Just list things, and then just to cover your bases, be like, nor anything. You could just start with that. Don't covet your ass, your donkey, your ox, your toaster. Or anything your neighbor has, don't covet it.
Male servant, anywhere in between servant. Like at this point, like remember, this is supposed to be like divine law. So this infinite wisdom. Like, so sometimes I imagine that, like, if I could examine this 100 times, I would not change a thing of it, right? And that's really, he was like, this is the best way to get across this principle, and then he just put it forward like that. You got it. Like
it really seems like he's making it up as he goes with no editing.
Moses is going crazy, right? He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to get all this." And
he's like, carving these into stone. So if you could be a little more succinct, that would be awesome.
No female servant.
He's just listing animals that he sees. Like we look around, no ox. Don't covet their oxen.
Don't covet their
male servant, nor the female servant, nor their hermaphroditic. I don't know, just whatever. Any servants.
Just anything. Or how about anything?
Just anything. Can I just write that? No, write all the other stuff too. I want to
write it all. Yeah. I'm God. I insist.
Now, covet's kind of an archaic word, so I just looked it up. It means to yearn, to possess, or have something. Or synonyms: to desire, to crave, to have one's heart set on, to want, to wish for, to long for, to hanker after, to hunger after, to thirst for.
It's another thought crime.
Okay, so yeah. So not only is it a thought crime, but what kind of economic system do we have here in America?
Yeah, right. You're talking
ever heard
about
the
capitalism?
Phrase, keeping up with the Joneses? Like, our whole system is based on, oh man, my neighbor has a really cool car. I covet that. I want to have that same thing, only better.
Yeah, and then they're like, use that for literally everything in life and be productive.
Put in some extra hours at work because you want to have that swimming pool because your
American
neighbor
dream.
has one. Yeah,
literally called the American dream.
Everything that we base, like this whole free market capitalist that Republicans like wank off to because it's such a great system, it's based on breaking this commandment. So I'm gonna give this a hard -1.
Yeah,
like our whole system falls apart if you're not allowed to covet things. Plus, again, thought crimes generally frowned upon in a free world.
Yeah.
So that's brings us back to what?
Can you imagine? You take him to court, and you're like, they're like, okay, so what's the deal? What's the deal, plaintiff? What's going on? And you're like, he wants my fucking car, And the judge is like, wait, are you kidding me? And he's like, no, he wants it real bad. And the defendant's like, I do want it. I'm guilty.
Like, did he steal it? No, he's just looking at it kind of covetously.
Really? How do you know? Well, he said, cool car. I wish I had one. So how much jail time we looking at? This doesn't happen.
He asked me where I got it. I feel like he wants to buy one just like it.
And the defendant's like, he's like, oh, it's true. Yeah. Starts crying.
Objection! He's bearing false witness. Yeah, no, this is a hard negative one for me.
Yeah.
So what does that put our running total at? -3, right? Yeah, -3. So when we say that the 10 Commandments are the root of all of our law, I'm going to requote Michelle Bachmann because I think it's important. The 10 Commandments, the law upon which every other law has descended, and upon which no other law, if it violates this moral law, could stand, because this is the ultimate law. Okay, every other law. So when I moved to Colorado, I was supposed to get my registration for my car within the first 30 days, switch to Colorado. Yeah. This descended from one of these commandments. Every law comes from these commandments.
Graven images, probably somehow. License, yeah, I don't know.
Probably. Michelle Bachmann is full of shit, and every Christian, and you see this happen over and over again, they bring it up, like the 10 Commandments is where we based our laws on. No! Not only that, but the two overlaps, the don't murder and don't steal, Japan has that law, China has that law, North fucking Korea has that law, ancient Rome, Babylon, Sumeria. I cannot show me one culture that doesn't have a prohibition against theft and murder. Yeah. Because those are the only two overlaps we share with those are the only positive scores that we assign, and we were being super generous. So I don't know why is this an argument that people just randomly make? Not only people, but congresswomen.
Okay, so actually, this is a really cool topic I want to talk about, but motivated reasoning. Have you ever heard about this?
Seems like something that I should have heard about. What is motivated reasoning? Is it where you really want to be right, so you're going to find a way to make it work?
Yeah, and the shitty part is this. Okay, oh God, this is the stuff. Whenever I talk to people, I'm like, but yeah, there's so much you need to know before I can discuss this. But because, like, for example, I get into debates with feminists a lot, and I myself am consider myself a feminist in almost all circles, except, when they get really extremist. But so they instantly, like, call me names, stuff, just like, Tim here. And I'm like, no, hang on. I'm with you. Listen, all I'm saying is feminism has a PR problem, right? That's it. It's a great movement. I've never met anyone that's against the ideology. I know they exist. I know there are real misogynists, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of people who aren't tying on to the label because the label seems offensive. So, I'm just trying to help. And then it never works out. But motivated reasoning happened there, it happened here, and all it is this. It's a subconscious thing. So it happens. Okay, so how we decide if an issue is true or not, we've already talked about the hierarchical, the hierarchical model. Not hierarchical model. That's statistics. It's the two paths. The parallel processing. It's a parallel processing theory. Do you remember what that was called? The elaboration likelihood model. Sorry. It is called the hierarchical, or it's based off an earlier one called the hierarchical model. I knew I was right. Okay.
Fascinating.
Elaboration likelihood model, sorry, is this. Are we likely to actually think about what the fuck's going on? That's the basically layman's term of what it is. Like, somebody says something to you like this. You say, let's say you come to me and you go, David, did you know they're making the new Firefly? And
that's amazing.
I say that to you. Yeah. And then I go, yeah, they're going to get Mal Reynolds. Or Mal Reynolds is going to be the main character. So Nathan Fillion is going to be back, right?
Wow.
Now, right away, yeah, you're going to be like, oh, that's cool. You're going to assign some truth value to it, right? You're going to be like, okay, I accept that. Sure. You're not going to be like, hang on. But if I said something like this, hey, Firefly's coming back, and they're going to put Patton Oswalt as Captain Reynolds, Mal Reynolds, you would probably be like, that doesn't sound right. And you'd probably be like, you'd start fact checking, right? You'd be like, wait, Patton Oswalt? Did you say that right? And I'm like, yeah, Patton Oswalt. He's the comedian. And they're like, yeah. Can you show me where you saw this?
Yeah.
And so what that is it violates something that you already hold to be true, or seems to make sense to you, right? It's a heuristic thing.
Right. I've already got one heuristic in that I trust you as a reliable source of information. So I'm already inclined to not fact check you when you say something.
Right, and there's a lot of heuristics. I mean, there's a list of like 100, but there are very important common ones that I like to talk about, and one of them is that one. It's the good man method or something. If you've considered something to be good, if you consider someone to be like a cool person that you like, You typically believe what they have to say. But more importantly, this one, I think, is, since it's subject matter that has to do with something you're passionate about, it's about previously held truths, right? You're like, whoa, Nathan Fillion's played it. Most remakes typically go with someone that's similar.
He's still acting like it wouldn't be a stretch to think of him as being cast again.
Yeah. So it's not bad. But if it violates something that you previously conceived, you're going to try to fact check it, right? Because it has to do with that cognitive dissonance thing. And the crazy thing here, motivated reasoning, is where you select one based on what you want, or it's more like this. Okay, so once you do have that cognitive dissonance, right? You have this moment of like, what? So motivated reasoning here, a better example would be not something like that because it's easily Googleable, but if it's like something Googleable, able to be Googled.
If you told me that people with brown hair, they've made a connection between brown hair and higher IQ scores, and that I wouldn't know how to fact check that because I don't have access to the literature. This is like a brand new study that just came out. But I've got brown hair and I feel like I'm smart. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a subset of confirmation bias as a whole. Like, so there's an umbrella of confirmation bias and things that go on under there, and this is one of them. It's motivated reasoning. So you're motivated because of some emotional value to something to find things that confirm what you already believe, not to look at it dispassionately, right? Not just to be like, that's interesting, and then you go and you just start saying, and you can watch this what people Google. This is often how I try to show this bias when I'm talking about depression or anxiety, and I'm talking about biases. Right. And sometimes I find myself saying, like, what would you Google if someone said that Bernie Sanders is the best president, for example? If I knew it was you, you would be like, or if I knew it was, sorry, not you, if I knew if it was a Republican, and then they would say like, no, Bernie Sanders bad, hit enter. And you're like, see, that's motivated reasoning.
Confirming evidence.
Yeah.
Or when that meta-analysis came out that said atheists were smarter than religious people. Like, a lot of people, myself included, just saw that and was like, yep, seems like it checks out. Didn't even click the link. I just saw the headline. I didn't care about the methodology. I didn't care about the meta-analysis. Later, I went back and fact-checked it because I was like, wait a minute, that seems like something I really want to be true. But your initial inclination is like, cool, checks out. Next fact.
Well, and motivated reasoning in particular, that's confirmation bias, but motivation reasoning in particular is using logical tools, or using your logic, but only allowing in information, or only looking for information that confirms it, right? So then you have
Google like atheists smarter than religious people and just read the first few articles that come up.
Yeah, it's like why I have such a problem when people say logic in general. First of all, they've almost never studied it, and I put a lot of time into that, and I still feel like it's a limited tool. It's cool, but people will be like, this is illogical, and I'm like, well, hang on, not by according to his premises and his conclusion. It makes some sense, but it has some specious reasoning here, right, or whatever. But illogical is just a weird term. I'm like, well, no, you could say illogical if it literally violates the laws of logic. But if it's like just something that they just don't understand, they don't understand, they're missing a premise somewhere, then I don't feel that illogical is a useful tool. But with here, you're using quote unquote logic. You're trying to come up with an argument that makes you right. Now that's what's happening with this veteran thing. Is they're looking to find why he can be discredited as a veteran, right?
Yeah.
And they're looking for anything. And so when they looked on his page that he had something that had to do with the gay. I was going to say gay position, but it's not really position, that he's gay, they instantly jumped on that and called him faggot and just went like crazy, right? Because they needed something, and they only looked for that. They didn't look for stuff of him like posting stuff about veterans' rights, which he's done. They looked, as soon as they found it, bam, they got it, click. And it still used logic, all veterans are patriotic. All gay people are not veterans, or are not true veterans. I'll say true veterans. Therefore, and this guy is talking out against them, therefore he must be gay, right, or something like that. But it does hold. There is a syllogism you can get out of it, right? Logic, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for an argument, but they're not just looking for a picture of puppies to make themselves feel good. They're looking for a logical thing that they can discredit.
And this happens too. Sometimes you'll see them move the goalposts. Like this is, I was actually in an argument on Facebook with somebody about the Ten Commandments. I was like, no, they're not based on the Ten Commandments. All but two of them are exactly contradictory to the Ten Commandments. And I listed them out like we did on the air. And I put that there because his argument was all of our laws are based off of the Ten Commandments. Like that was his premise. And so when you disprove that, if he were being dispassionate and wasn't motivated by this motivated reasoning, he would say, oh, wow, I guess our laws are not based on the Ten Commandments. I was wrong. But here's what happens. and this happens a lot. This wasn't just happening to me, but I see it over and over again. I point that out. I say only 2 laws are even remotely related to our legal system. And he says, and many, many laws are rooted in those 2 commandments. I would say that it's very impressive that so few commandments can inspire so many laws. Facts, no spinning. Count the laws that deal with murder, stealing, fraud, lying, and misleading, and you will understand that there is no spinning here. So he moves the goalpost. Now all of our laws aren't based on the 10 commandments, but isn't it impressive that those 2 laws could make so many laws spin off of them?
Yeah, and then there's just...
So he's still right.
So moving the goalposts, also just blatantly false bullshit. This pisses me off because this happens and it bugs me. This happened on David Smalley's page. He put something about feminism, and it was this girl saying why I don't need feminism. And the video is dumb. I think the girl doesn't understand the position. So I think there's a lot of nuance there she doesn't understand, and a lot of her points are silly, but some of them are good. And so I was like, oh, this is one of those nuanced positions. There's sure to be a fight here, right, of people overgeneralizing. Oh, look at that white cat. But on that page, like this girl was, being rude, just really rude, and like say one said shut up, one said fuck you, things like that. Because someone was like, I call myself a humanitarian. Fuck you was the response, and I was like, see, this is what I'm talking about. You can't. That's not
a way to change minds.
He put out something. He says, I consider myself a human. Here's a good opportunity to engage in a conversation. If you're if you're a feminist and you're like, no, my position's sound, you could be like, why is that? What is it about feminism that it, as a subgroup of humanitarianism, what is it that offends you there, or why can't you identify as both? That would be a good question, or a good point of a starting point, common ground.
Counterpoint, fuck you.
Yeah, but fuck you was the answer. In other words, I don't care to have you in my movement, or if I do, I just don't want people like you around, and I don't care for you, and a lot of implications there. Right. But this one girl said, she said lol, and then at this one guy who was like, he said, I don't remember, it doesn't matter what he said, but she had this discontempt in what she was saying. First she lolled at his position, which she said it was a legitimate position. He was just like, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but it was a legitimate statement. He was like, hey, blah blah blah, and she's like lol, and she's like I don't even care to engage with people that believe that social justice isn't worth going for. Oh, because what he said was there's a lot of SJWs who push for horse shit, is what he said. Right. And then she said, lol, I don't even care to engage someone, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, see, and here it is again. I'm just gonna
right past each other.
Insert. What he said logically was that there are some people that he calls SJWs that push some things that he thinks are worthless or have no base in reality, or whatever horse shit means, right? He has no taste for it. That's all he said. So to say, lol, you don't believe social justice issues aren't worth going for, you jumped to a massive conclusion, and then you insulted him for it, and you laughed at him. You literally typed out that you literally laughed. You took his position so unseriously. You wanted him to know. Yeah, that you laughed at it. And so I just pointed that out. I was like, listen, here it is again. I just want to put my finger in here as a little bookmark and say, hey, this is it. This is why there's a PR problem. And I was like, I mean, everybody agrees that humans should be treated equal. How do you fuck that up? Like this is how you fuck it up. Okay, it's the process, not the content, right? Stop trying to pretend that they're misogynist and that they don't agree with the content. They don't agree with the process. And so and she goes, no, you misunderstood, don't read into what I'm saying, crawl out of my head. And she goes, I wasn't trying to be I wasn't discrediting his position. Lol can mean, and interesting word there, can, because a lot of people don't want to directly lie. But she was like, lol can mean laugh out loud, or means laugh out loud, which can, that was what the can was, I remember now, can lighten the mood. And I was like, yeah, I feel like you're being disingenuous there.
Not sure that's what you were doing.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know. And I'm looking at your other posts here, and you were pretty salty. And she's like,
you're not trying to lighten the mood.
Yeah, she was saying awful things in other parts, and then she's like, again, crawl into my head. I'm sorry. Are you a something or a
psychic?
ESP or a psychologist? Yeah, that was a psychic or a psychologist. And I was like, neither, but I'm closer to a psychologist. But you're right. However, I believe that most people who read lol after you've been pretty abusive in your other chat understand that it's this. And are you really saying that? Like, and she goes, oh, I don't know, why don't you get out of my head? And I was just like, see, this is motivated reasoning. You're clearly you're not even willing to say, yes, of course I wasn't being right. You're just trying to point out any piece of logic. It's not just reasoning. She's not just like fuck you like the one person was. That's not motivated reasoning. This is where she's trying to make logic. She's pulling out like, oh, here's a jumping conclusion, here's a jumping conclusion,
Right.
but she's using it in a very selective manner. And if you just take a step back, you're like, that's why I'm like, can we take a step back real quick? I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that if someone lulls at something you say that's serious, then we are to take that person, that almost everyone should understand that person is trying to bring levity to the situation, especially when it's followed by, I have no time to listen to you. Is that what you're really saying? You're really putting that forward? I just want to make sure here. And a lot of times they double down. Yeah, they're like, yup. And I'm like, okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. No, I don't think that's true. No one's going to do that. So motivated reason here. Yeah, but there's a way to go against this. So I like to give a little bit of hope at the end of every damning session when I talk about psychological like biases and things we do incorrectly. How
do you help people break out of this motivated reasoning cycle?
So they did experiments on this, and there's a way to do this. So what you do is before they are allowed to, or you present the information of which they have to begin to fact check for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. There's a couple different ways to do this, but a couple of different ways they have done this is that one, you can say, "Hey, you're going to have to defend this. Okay, this is important. You're going to have to defend this against critics." Then people go, "Oh," and they look for real reasoning. Okay, that was one of them. Another one is to. It was right along those lines. Damn it. I can't remember, but it's calling people out before you give the information and insisting that they act or giving them a consequence if they don't act fairly and dispassionately. Defend it. And another one was write on it or something. It was similar. It was along the same lines, but there's been a lot of experiments on this, but the two kind of seminal ones it's essentially that someone is going to examine your logic afterwards, or you will be put on display.
We'll be checking your work.
You will be shown that you will be wrong, and there will be a social consequence. Like there's an audience or whatever, right? There's there's something going to happen that it's important that you have a fair, unbiased shit. And then they'll actually look for things and they do it better. And they never said that they completely got rid of it, but they do attempt to, right? To get the right answer. So this I'm super, super nervous about in our movement. And feminism, which I think is a very important movement, they fuck themselves. It's to the point where, I mean, I'm talking to a lady who's a professor, and I was like, listen, I got to let you know that no one respects your field in any other field. Like, we have feminist stuff in psychology. We quote everybody. We never quote women's studies because it's not real. Like, you don't have falsifiability. And then we got into one of these things, and it just started going down. She's like, what do you mean? It's humanities. It's the same as most humanities. And I was like, not true. Because she said philosophy too. I was like, not true. Philosophy does thought experiments, which is falsifiability. They say, now imagine this, right? If what I'm saying is true, then this is what we should expect. But don't we all agree this would happen? And yeah. See, it's a way to get around doing an experiment, because if everyone agrees on the outset, you don't have to demonstrate anything, right? So I was like, no, they do, and lots of people do. They say, now, if I wasn't right, then this is what you would expect, right? I've read humanities papers, and a lot of them do that. This is what I'm saying, though. That doesn't happen here. Like, there's a lot of circular reasoning of like patriarchy. Like, there's a different lens to look at this as, and it's that we are a socially biomorphic species, and we started with hunters and gatherers, and then along the ways we just forgot to ever question that, and we just kept things different for people, and we slowly moved closer and closer to now, where women are finally getting the same rights and same rights and responsibilities as men. But really, it's a cultural problem. You can't point your fingers at just the men and say yes, we have more privilege in almost all cases, but anyway, whatever. I get passionate about this shit because I think that's a more useful lens, whether it's true or not, to getting everyone on the table and just talking about and just getting it over with. Like, in conflict resolution in general, I'm always like, what's your end goal here, man? And they're like, hold on, I'm really tied up into specifics. We're going to find out exactly what time she was home. And I'm like, what do you want out of this? And they're like, well, for her to say I'm sorry. And I'm like, you're not getting there anytime soon, and you're making her less likely to do that. Who the fuck cares if it was 12:59 or 1? It doesn't matter. I mean, it does maybe to you because you want to prove a point, but it doesn't matter in the long run. So same thing here. I'm like, you know what? Who knows? I mean, we're all writing theories. There's no way to test this. We're all writing theories of like why there's sexual differences and expectations, but it's definitely a culturally accepted thing, and it's something we want to get past. Everyone does, but blaming it on one gender, I'm like, oh, you're going to alienate a ton of dudes, like just right out of the gate, and I don't think it's right anyway. I think it's a like I said, like it's a primal instinct to be different based on sex.
It's true. We and before we go too off in the weeds and I have to change the title of the episode,
Yeah.
I'll wrap it back around to atheism. And I will say, on a more positive note, what you're talking about with motivated reasoning, where if you are taken to a position you don't want to be to, that's a more solid position to have because you've done everything you can to prove it wrong. Like, for example, with your example of Sam Harris and vegetarianism, like he does not want to be a vegetarian. He loves meat, but he's having a hard time not being a vegetarian just on the reasoning. And so that's a more solid case than Firefly's coming back and it's got Nathan Fillion. That's something I want to be true. And I think the positive aspect, the one thing we have as atheists that gives us at least a small advantage is that at some point in our lives, we have taken the proposition that there is no happy, magical Disneyland kingdom that we all get to go to with our dead pets and grandparents after we die. We have managed to reason ourselves out of that very tempting and very awesome afterlife proposition. And Christians haven't yet done that. So at least at some point, the feminists, the liberals, the libertarians, anyone that's in the atheist movement that was raised religious, which is most of them, have at some point been able to reason themselves into a position that they did not want to be at.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that is, and again, there's exceptions. There's people who are raised atheistic, or there's people who are, the Christian stereotype of they got mad at God and they left religion because they wanted to sin. There's probably people like that. I can't speak for every atheist, but I think of the people in my experience, anecdotally, most of us would rather there be a God and get to spend eternity with our kids and family and wife and husband and grandparents. We just don't see that as a justified position. And so at least in that specific scenario, we've managed to overcome our motivated reasoning and come to what we think is a correct premise.
Right. Yeah. And use the information processing portion of our brain. And just a final note there, we've done brain imaging of this, and you use a whole different pathway whenever you do motivated reasoning than actual whenever you pull back and go, I wonder if this is true, which I call truth seeking, but you can call it anything: information processing, unbiased thinking, whatever.
Critical thinking.
But whenever you're really curious about something and you're like, really, I've never heard of this thing before, and they're like, yeah, it's called Flimabim, and it's about these aliens who are having a culture war, and you're like, oh, I want to learn about that. It's a whole different part of your brain. So yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, man. I don't like it. People could not do that, and then just be able to just say, oh, thanks for correcting me. I say that, and 9 times out of 10, after I have a debate, like on Facebook or something, I'm like, oh, well, thank you for correcting me. I'm a little less ignorant now. They're like, you don't have to be snarky. And I'm like, I swear to God, I'm not. I'm saying thank you. I was wrong. And they're like, okay, ... or something like that. And I'm like, what the? Why can't this be normal?
It's the exchanging of ideas, especially through social media, is very adversarial. Almost as like the premise, like this is a cage match. Only one person gets to walk away from this. And really it should be viewed as a way for people to be less wrong, both yourself and the other people in the conversation.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the default mentality people have going into Facebook or Twitter or wherever these ideas are being discussed, at least the ones that are emotionally resonant, right? Like feminism or religion or gluten-free diet or vaccinations or whatever the conversation is. There tend to be playing off that emotional center of your brain that makes you feel like you have to fight for your life and not that you're trying to find out what the truth is.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think about, and this is a whole other episode, so I won't get into it, but debates. The term, the concept, and do they work? Like, I'm really curious about that.
We may have to go into that in a future episode. But for now, I think we're coming up on time.
Yep. Well, cool. Yeah, that got crazy and weird. But anyway, motivated reasoning was the cool psychological thing I wanted to bring to it. And then the fact that, yeah, it's alarming how quickly people can switch on even like the most basic tenets or the most religiously held values, anything to make sure that that's still right, rather than saying, oh, I guess I misperceived veterans. Like that's all it took, right? Mm-hmm. It could have been, the whole thing's gone. It's like, oh, I guess I didn't understand.
I guess the 10 Commandments are not the basis on all of our literally thousands of laws that exist in the current legal system.
Like, I don't know, tax law, maybe not. But yeah.
So yeah, just if we upset you or we turned on your emotional center today, feel free to email us at thegodtheorypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know why we're wrong, why we're missing something important. If we are wrong, we actually generally want to know. So weigh in.
Yes. Speaking of, I'm put on my reading glasses. They're not reading like they're normal glasses. I'm not that old yet, but soon I'll be that old. We had some commentary on some of our stuff. I did want to say it. One, someone was criticizing our Mormon episode or the Oregon standoff thing, and this is something I've heard a lot of people say. But two things. One, they said only 2 of the 40 people are Mormon, so they don't think that's what it's about. I do want to figure out what your thoughts are on that, because I have my own thoughts, but I'm not the expert. And then the other one said, oh, actually, let's get this one first. What do you think about that?
I don't know. The spokespeople, the interviews I've heard have been very Mormon, but I have not heard interviews from all 40 or however many people are there. So if that's true, I'd have to fact check that. But if that's true, then maybe there's something else going on too. I can speak for the 2 people who put themselves forward as spokespeople and did interviews, that is very heavily Mormon influenced.
See, was that so hard? Jesus, yeah. I think I'm spoiled because anyway, whatever.
But yeah, it could be that there's something else going on, and the majority of people aren't being motivated by that.
Right. But the lens you gave forth was a helpful one. But maybe it's wrong. Yeah, who knows? Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay. So the other one was, we cannot defeat this enemy unless Obama calls it what it is: radical Mormonism.
Okay. Well, wait, what? Was that the same comment?
Can't tell if it's snarky or not.
Wait, was that the same comment?
No, different one.
Okay, I was like, I feel like I'm getting mixed signals.
No. They just said we cannot defeat the enemy unless Obama. It's Jim Dandy on YouTube. Okay. I don't know. Unless it calls it what it is: radical Mormonism. I can't tell.
Yeah.
If they're being funny, or maybe it's a legitimate thing. Maybe they're like, no, we need Obama to say that.
There is a double standard in that we don't call Christian sects terrorists when they radicalize, which again, at least for 2 of the people in this situation, that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he's being snarky, I do kind of feel like that might be part of the problem, is that we're quick to point out the Islamic terrorism, but we don't point out other religions. There are Buddhist terrorists, there are Shinto terrorists. Like every system of magical thinking will lead to some irrational thinking at some point if you have a big enough sample size.
Yeah, because it gives that magical step of like, because God.
Yeah, therefore all is justified.
Yeah. There was one more, and it was damn it, I can't find it. It was criticizing us, and I like those because if I'm wrong, I want to know. Like that's good, but I don't remember what it was. So we got a ton of stuff from people trying to sell us stuff, but anyway, that's not that.
Yes.
But it's So I guess that's it for this week. We'll talk about something else next week. So if you have anything you want to send us, you can do that through that email address. You can join the Facebook group on facebook.com/groups/God Theory Podcast. And we also have a Twitter. If you're into the Twitterverse, it's God Theory Pod, because podcast is too long. So God Theory Pod, and you can follow us there. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening in, and hopefully that wasn't too long for you. And again, be careful of motivated reasoning, guys. It's a big deal. We all do it. It sucks, but the less of it we can do, the better.
Yes.
See you guys next week.